We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Hello and welcome to Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio America Network. I'm your host, Mark Angelides. Today we are talking political discourse and the No Kings rally, what it means and how corporate America is cashing in. Liberty Nation Radio is sponsored by LibertyNation.com. You can access podcasts, breaking news, analysis, and a range of biting and brilliant shows to whet your appetite for freedom and your fondness for the great American Constitution. Hello and welcome to Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio America Network. I'm your long-suffering host, Mr. Mark Angelides, and we're joined today by Liberty Nation's Chief Political Correspondent, Mr. Graham J. Noble. Thanks for being here, Graham.
Nice to be here, Mark.
So, Graham, you wrote a fantastic article. Now, this, just to give some context here to our listeners, this is in the wake of the No Kings protest that took place last weekend. But it's also in the wake of several, well, let's call them what they are, high-profile political scandals that have failed to scandalize at least 50% of America. And that is talking about Jay Jones and Graham Plattner, two candidates who are hoping to win election to office. And they've been, it turns out that they've had some pretty rough things to say. And you wrote a fantastic article on that called "A Shadow of Political Violence Still Dogging Democrats." Now, there's something quite dark about Jay Jones. Now, Jay Jones, he's running for, I believe it's Attorney General of Virginia. The election's November 4th. And he's apologized for his remarks, and his colleagues in the Democratic Party are still backing him to the hilt and not calling for him to step aside. But he said some pretty rough things in messages about his let's call them what they are, political opposition back in 2022, didn't he?
Yes, he did. And basically, he was in a conversation, and I believe the full story is that this began as a phone conversation, and then the person he was speaking to, and her name is Carrie Coyner, and she was at the time a delegate to the Virginia House. I don't know if she still is, but she was at that time. And Jay Jones himself was also a delegate, but he had just resigned. And he was was speaking to her on the telephone, as I understand it, and then she hung up on him. But then he was texting her, and he was speaking about the then Speaker of the Virginia House, who was a Republican. His name was Todd Gilbert. And basically, Jones texted Coyner and said, and this is exactly his words, so I'm quoting directly here to what he wrote in the text. 3 people, 2 bullets, Gilbert, Hitler, and Pol Pot. And Pol Pot was a really nice chap, of course, as we all know, wiped out almost a third of his own people. Gilbert gets 2 bullets to the head. Spoiler, put Gilbert in the crew with the 2 worst people you know, and he receives both bullets every time. So, and again, the context here, he's saying that Gilbert is a much worse human being than both Adolf Hitler and Pol Pot.
Yeah, I'm sure they all like dogs, though, right? Is that the standard? It went further than that, didn't it? And for me,
I think Hitler liked dogs and Pol Pot ate them.
Yes, that's absolutely possible. It actually went further, and this is the part that really, we a lot of people in the media that they talk about how distressing and how shocking they find things, and they don't really. They're just using it for partisan ammunition, really. And they don't really find it shocking.
No.
But I actually was shocked by the follow-on to that, where he described that he was raising, the former speaker was raising little fascists, and he hoped that they died in their mother's arms. And these are 2 young children. And that I found, I really did actually find that beyond the pale, which is rare for me, because most of these alleged scandals, I think there's more heat than fire there, more smoke than fire. But this was this is pretty disgusting, say all you want about your opponent, but the young children, these were like kindergarten age children. And yet all is apparently forgiven for Mr. Jones by his party, which, considering this is his elected brethren and sistren, I don't know if that's a word, sistren, we'll call it a word.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I like it. Say that words are violence. And they use the term words are violent to justify retaliation in a violent form, physical violence, because they say words are violence. And yet they seem to be backing him to the hilt and the only reason I can think of there is because they want a Democrat in office rather than a Republican, and therefore willing to overlook any sin whatsoever.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, and definitely, that particular office. I mean, look, Virginia is always a kind of, if you like, a pivotal state. Really, it's kind of it's got
Commonwealth, indeed. Yeah.
Well, the Commonwealth, yes, yeah, and it's gotten kind of more blue, but it's still I guess you could still describe it as a swing state almost. And we're talking about state level control here, and to have a Democrat, obviously they got Abigail Spanberger, who's the Democrat running to be governor.
Yep.
And of course, they would love to have nothing more than a Democrat governor and a Democrat state attorney general, which of course is what Jones is running for. So yeah, that's kind of a crucial political post, and in order to secure that post for the Democratic Party, they apparently are willing to overlook anything, the kind of things that just even maybe I would say 10, 15 years ago, if any politician, Republican or Democrat, were to say those kind of things in a statement or a text message or an email or whatever, and it came out, everybody, probably on both sides, people would be calling for that person to back out of the race, and would their party would disown them. But that's not the case anymore.
No, apparently we're in the new world, and I know a lot of Jones defenders have been saying. Have been trying a bit of whataboutism and a bit of deflection in terms of saying, have you heard the things that Donald Trump says? And in all honesty, yes, I have heard things Donald Trump says, and I've never heard him say that he wished somebody's kindergarten age children would die in their mother's arms. I've not heard him say that,
but he did say "fight like hell" once. So
he did, which really, along with every other politician who's ever ran for office. But apparently, those are quite bad. Now, I wonder if there's a secondary aspect to this. So clearly, his supporters want him to win because they'd rather a Democrat than a Republican, and I mean that's in many ways that's fair enough, right? You kind of want whichever team you're on, you kind of want your team to win.
Yeah.
But I wonder if the full-throated defense comes not because of Jay Jones, but because they're hoping it won't impact any other ballot. So you mentioned running for governor Abigail Spanberger against I believe she's Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earl Sears, and currently actually this is a great time to promote Liberty Nation's Public Square poll tracker, which has some amazing graphics. It's up to date. It's an aggregate of all of the polling on all the top races that you might want to pay attention to, including approval ratings, elections, direction of country, congressional ballots, that kind of thing. But according to our aggregate over there on Liberty Nation, Public Square, Spanberger is currently 7.1 points ahead of Winsome Earl Sears, the Republican. And I wonder if Miss Spanberger believes that if she were to abandon ship on Jay Jones, that it would impact her both with Republicans, because then they'd have or independents, sorry, more likely, because then they'd have a reason to say, well, you see, there is something rotten in the state of the Virginia Democrat Party. But also, she might lose people from her own side, from the Democrats, who have a vociferous belief that defend our own no matter what, win by whatever means necessary. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point, Mark. I mean, because this this late in the game, as it were, you're suddenly going to, you as the Spanberger, as the Democrat gubernatorial candidate, at this late hour, you're going to suddenly abandon what you could almost describe as a running mate, the man who's running for the attorney general.
They're on the same placards.
They are. They're on those names are on the
printed.
same. Absolutely, yes.
And you can't return them.
So yeah, right. You're gonna have to get whole new placards made up, and so it's a bit of a disaster. So they're just hoping, I think, to gloss over it, and I guess they think it's it's this late in the day anyway. So let's just grin and bear it, so to speak, and let's just pretend that it's not a really big deal. It's like, okay, he apologized, and so let's move on. But they only move on when it's convenient.
Yeah. This is the new MoveOn.org. We'll be back with Graham J. Noble after this short break. Don't go anywhere.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.